Now, the next guy that we're going to talk about is also a safety because, like I said, we had a couple of safeties that we needed to address, but that was because the people in the chat, man, shout out to y'all. Y'all, these are the guys y'all want us to talk about. So we are going to continue to give y'all what y'all asked for, player. All right. So this guy, Jalen Pitre, number 8 out of Baylor. Man, funny story with him. I had no clue, but he was a part of the Art Ball's last recruiting class, and he was like the only player to stay committed to Baylor when everybody else left in the midst of Baylor getting all the sanctions and having all the allegations come out about them, man. So I was like, it was interesting to hear that backstory and how, like, I guess loved he is at Baylor because of him staying, where when they talk about guys like Kellen Mond was in his class as well, how he left to go to Texas A&M, and a couple other guys that, have actually went on to have successful collegiate careers and go to the NFL had decommitted because of all that. So that was a little interesting for me right there, man. But with Jalen, 6 foot, 197 pounds, safety, nickel corner.
Yeah, this guy's a little more intriguing than the last one.
Yes.
We could maybe draft him with or without Edmonds.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. He gives you position flexibility. If you want to play him as a safety, you could. I like him a lot as a nickel, just because, like, cutting the tape on this past year, like, he was excelling playing around the line of scrimmage. I mean, very, very productive as well, right? But his productivity was so diverse. Check this out. 75 tackles, right? But then he has 3 sacks. Then he has 5 forced turnovers, 7 PBUs, 18 and a half tackles for loss, and he had 2 picks where he touched that paint. Like, when I think of guys like that, man, that are able to not just get the balls in terms of creating turnovers, but actually turn turnovers into points, turnovers into touchdowns, like, to me, it jumps off the screen a little bit more. In terms of, like, when I look at him, what do I think that he does? Well, I think he's a high-level athlete with very nimble feet. I love his hips. I think he's super fluid with his hips in terms of just covering, so you can play him zone or you could play him man. That's where the hip part comes in, right? So I like that. But then I also think that he has big vision in terms of when you watch him process routes, how he communicates with guys. Man, it was some stuff that he was doing, man, working with it was either 42 or 22 was the other safety. Man, just some of the high level communication stuff that we do in the NFL. It's like you hardly see that type of passing of routes and communication at the collegiate level. And especially the Big 12, where we know defense isn't like a premium over there, Yeah, but yeah. It was really cool to see him doing that and introducing some of those concepts at that level. He also played under Matt Rule. That was another thing that was pretty interesting, man, about him. But the more I watched him, I'm just like, yo, this guy is super productive. And when you talked about Mike Hilton earlier for JoJo,
yeah, this makes way more sense.
This is the guy. This is my Mike Hilton, because you watch how he times blitzes. He jumps those counts almost perfect. And I think he does a good job because of how athletic and fast he is, because he's bigger and faster than a Mike Hilton. You watch, like, when Mike disguises his blitzes, he disguises them by stepping up to make it look like he's pressed man to man at times, right? Or he's going to be in some type of transition with these routes, and then he goes. Whereas with Jalen, he takes a little bit of a deeper approach to give a better disguise, but because he's faster, he covers that ground, and he's able to generate a lot more force and power when he's having to rush against big offensive linemen, because he does do that as well. They'll have him stunting inside to the B gap, to the A gap at times, but because of the speed and the just tenacity that he plays with, he's able to win. He's able to out-athlete those guys. Now, I won't say that he's the strongest guy. He's very similar in terms of strength that I think of Jaquan that we just talked about. But as a whole, he's still another physical guy. He's a guy he's not turning down anything. He's with all of that. And, when you get those type of safeties, right? Because we know little guys typically don't like to hit. Little guys typically don't like to be physical, but he was like an outside linebacker for them. Yeah, so yeah. That's in him. Well, because the thing is this, they ran a 4-2-5. So a 4-2-5 essentially would be it's a 3-4 for us. He would be the TJ Watt minus any rush responsibility. So they blitz him in the way that we tell TJ to cover. Whereas, like, TJ blitzes predominantly, and TJ is always rushing predominantly, and he does a little bit coverage. With Jalen, it's mainly coverage with a little bit of rushing. But when you run a 4-2-5, that's just the nature of it. And if you're playing in the Big 12, it makes sense to run a 4-2-5 because we know it's all about spread offense. So you want to have an athlete out there versus having a linebacker walked out. That's the biggest reason with the 4-2-5. But with him, man, I just think that, like I said, he's a dude, man. He's definitely a dude. But my question is this with him. I feel like he's good at a ton of things. I just don't know what he's great at. You know what I mean? Like, what do you say, yo, this is, for a fact, this is him right here. That's the part for me where I'm just like, it's a pro and a con. It's a pro because, man, he's so good that you can play him multiple places. He can do multiple things. Like I said, the con part is like, do I only want to play him here, or would I want to see if he can, survive playing back, in the half? Because we've seen him do some of that, but it's like, I don't know. Can he do that full time? I just don't know, because he never really had to, the way they were using him, and his versatility just made that a bonus, So that's the part with Jalen where just that little bit of a concern. But other than that, man, his list of pros drastically outweigh the cons to me, man.
Well, that's why they're saying he's moving up the boards a little bit, because of his performance in the Senior Bowl. Like you said, he
absolutely, man.
Working a lot more around the line of scrimmage, covering slot guys, not dudes that were taking really deep routes, but apparently he was covering everyone in the Senior Bowl. He was having no problem with that.
He was.
I get you on the go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just agreeing with you. I was like, he definitely was excelling with his coverage. Like, that jumps off the screen to me, man.
Like, the pros and cons, I'm with you on that, because the pros of, man, the versatility. We get him out there for 50 or 60% of the snaps, almost like a Mike Hilton. But kind of sucks if you're drafting a dude and they're saying he's looking like second round. They got him ranked in like the 50 to 60 range, just in terms of like the overall prospects. Kind of sucks if you're drafting a dude in the second round and he's only going to play 60 or 70 versus the last safety we talked about. He's got a role. He's going to play 100% of the snaps as safety. Yeah, but this is today's NFL, so like I think.
Well, I was gonna say, honestly, he plays more than 60. If you're a nickel corner in the NFL, you're playing 80% of the snaps. You're up 70-80%. Think about how often we're in nickel. Like, we played a lot. Think about how often Mike Hilton is on the field with the Bengals. A lot.
Oh yeah. He's
so it's like, you're going to play. Like, don't look at it as, he's a nickel, so we're drafting, mid-second round for a guy that's only going to play 50% of snaps. No. In today's NFL, he's a starter. That's what the nickel position is now. So when I think of that, when I think of all these intangibles that we talked about, the real question to me becomes, where could we get him? Because if he goes out and runs a crazy fast time at the combine or at his pro day, bro, he'll sneak into that first round. I think that because the productivity is there, like almost in the sense of, I don't want to say an Asante Samuel Jr., but in that same you know what I mean? But it was like, remember how we were talking about he had that range where he could have went.
Petrie,
right. And that's what I'm saying.
Better prospect.
But no. But think about this, though. The range for Asante Samuel Jr. was what? First to third. It was like he could have went anywhere in there. And that was, obviously when he tested it, we saw, okay, he's not this, it's more that. Then that's why he went where he went. But if Jalen comes out here and he runs 4.3, 4.4, like, that's different because he's big speed now. Now, that changes a little bit in terms of when you put him in that slot. So that's the part for me where I'm just like, I want to know or see at least, what that part is in terms of the testing. But I definitely like him a lot, though, man. I think he's a guy that can help us in a major way.
Yeah, he wasn't one of the guys, or just his position isn't one of the guys really that high on our board of needs, I think, especially if we bring back Witherspoon, if we somehow sign Stephon Gilmore. So a lot of it's going to be dependent on what we do in free agency. But let's say we just bring back Witherspoon. We don't get Gilmore, Cam Sutton, Trey Norwood. Then, I think it could make sense if we take him in the second round.
That's my thing, man. I just think
that Cam on the outside, Witherspoon, then he could be like your set nickel guy.
Yeah, 100% he could be, man. 100%. So, like I said, I definitely think that he's a guy that is worth looking into because of what he can bring to the table and because of the size and just the overall productivity. Man, 18.5 tackles for loss, but that's a ton of productivity around that line of scrimmage, man. A ton of it. Now, he's another one that I would still like to see improve his tackling as well. But just like Jaquan, like we just talked about, right? It's like, man, he's never going to be afraid to shoot his gun. He's never afraid to go, be physical. And to me, that's half the problem. As long as you got that, you're good, man.